To start our wonderful day of activities today, we have two inspirational speakers with us for this session, who I am very honored to welcome and introduce. So, first off, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Michael Tan, or Doc Mike as he is fondly known to many. Doc Mike is a medical anthropologist, writer, and academic. From 2014 to 2020, he was Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. When I was in college, he was also our Dean in the College of Sciences, Social Sciences, and Philosophy. He's been working with health NGOs for years now and is known for his work on medicinal plants, pharmaceuticals, and public health. In 2012, he was elected into the National Academy of Science and Technology, the highest advisory body on science in the country. So without further ado, let's all welcome Dr. Michael Tan to the stage.
So magandang umaga ulit sa inyong lahat, maayong buntag sa atong tanan, and all the other languages that we have. Okay, I've been working on an article for an anthology on the drug situation in the Philippines. And tamang-tama, NoBox's invitation came in. I said, oh, a lot of the stuff I was doing will feed into the presentation today. You know? And when Ines talked with me, she said, precisely because we're NoBox, we want to think outside of the box. No? And Dr. Carl Hart has certainly challenged us with the myths around so-called drug addiction and drug abuse. No? And I decided I'm a bit playful here with the title, no? because of all the work I've been doing on this article for an anthology. Up to this morning, I was still coming up with new articles, which just amazed me. I mean, things that I knew all this time, but suddenly everything is coming together. So I have NoBox to thank for forcing me to put these things together. And the title speaks for itself. It's our wonderfully psychoactive world, and the price we pay for being so terrified of it. Because really, what Carl was referring to as well, it's all the biases we have in here really have to go to the foundation for this. Why are we behaving in this way? Why are we being manipulated to react in the ways we do? Okay, I'm going to start with the story here. The hunt for the elusive buyera. I'll explain what the buyera is in a while. Many of you, okay, we'll stop with this slide first. This is an old print showing a buyera, and I'm sure none of you know what a buyera is because we think they disappeared. And I will explain what the buyera is. But that's a 19th century print. And my story is about a 95-year-old Lumad, one of the indigenous peoples of Mindanao, who was stranded here in Manila because of the pandemic. And I'm very close to her. She's part of a contingent of Lumad, or indigenous peoples. It's a delegation of kids who we have been hosting in the University of the Philippines. They were displaced by militarization, and they said her companion sent me an SOS saying that this leader, this 95-year-old leader, had run out of nganga. So our Filipinos know what nganga is. Nganga is betel nut. It's areca. It's a psychoactive. It's a stimulant that I thought only older people still use. They chew the nut. I'm going to show you a picture in a while of what the nut is. And they get a high on it. And this is not the first time there's been an SOS. But people were worried, where are we going to get her areca? Because in Mindanao, you could get it from the roadside. And I said, have you checked? And I named all the places in our university where I knew we had areca. And they said, sir, we've finished all the areca in your university campus. So off with the wild chase I did. I even recruited my Inquirer readers. I said, help me, help me. There's this woman who needs her areca. You have to tell me where can I buy it. And I got all kinds of suggestions, including ordering from Baguio City, which I did online. It arrived, but there were missing components. I said, oh no. And then someone told me I could go to a store in Chinatown to get it. And I called them and they described it. They asked me, did you want it with chocolate or not? I said, Areca nut with chocolate? What are you talking about? They said, the Taiwanese here in the Philippines are the main buyers of Areca nut, and they take it with chocolate. It's chocolate mixed with the Areca nut. I said, no, no, no. This woman will never take it. No? And then after all the hassle, one day I had to go to Quiapo, which is the center of Manila. I had to buy, well, not buy, but I do that every year for my medical students. No, I look at the medicinal plants and all. And lo and behold, there was there were several buyeras. They don't call themselves buyeras, but there were several people who were selling the complete set of areca nut. Next slide, please. I'll show you what they sell. Okay, this is what you have. No? The betel nut is the one on the bottom of the slide. No? That's the nut. It's a palm tree. No? And the leaf is called ikmo. It's a relative of black pepper. No? And then they mix it with lime. So that's the white stuff. That's not cocaine. Okay, the white stuff is lime. No? And they mix it with tobacco. And they're very, very clear that it has to be La Reina. No? So you'll see certain preferences there. And I said, what's this yellow thing? No, I'm sort of familiar with the use. I'd never seen the yellow stuff. And they said, that's dilao, no, that's turmeric. And they said their Muslim clients take it with turmeric. No? And then, anyway, to make a long story short, I said, oh my God, look at that. It's here in Quiapo. There were 6 or 7 of them selling it. And I was looking at the people who were buying them. They included very young people, no? And from all over the Philippines. I talked with a guy who's Waray, no? And he says he takes it, no, regularly. It's a stimulant, na nga, as I said, much stronger than tobacco. You have to be careful when you use it. No? The first time, your face flushes and all that. No? But this is an example of a psychoactive, no? Betel nut, no? Which is legal. No? Hard to find, but if you know where to find it, then you know now it's Quiapo in case you ever need to buy them or you want to try it. No? And my point, of course, is that there's so much of psychoactives all around us. No? My point is that all cultures have a range of psychoactive substances that we've learned to use. I'm sorry, I can't see the slide right now. Okay, I'm just going to name what I can remember from what I posted there. No? Tobacco, of course. No? You have tobacco, you have coffee, which Carl also mentioned. You have tea, you have kava, you have kombucha. I have a bottle of kombucha nearby here. No? And cultures have learned to tap these for many different purposes, to stimulate, to calm you down, to keep you alert, induce euphoria, which I'll get back into later on, even to comfort ourselves. No? And many of these were tied to religious experiences. No? They were used for healing. They were used to induce trance. No? Talagang sumasayaw ang baylan, and they smoke tobacco, and everything combines together to create what we call an altered state of consciousness. Very, very important in here. No? Okay, here are the other substances. No? All kinds of alcoholic beverages. No? And let's not forget, even sugar is a psychoactive. You get a high from sugar. You watch kids, they get a high on that. No? And I'll bet you didn't know that there's something called tea drunkenness, no? Which the Japanese and the Chinese recognize. You can get drunk on tea. And there are actual guides on how to get drunk on tea, and it's not meant in a bad way. It calms you down. It's a very, very different experience. And I would not have believed this until my son, who was 12 years old at that time, or 11 years old, was taking a new tea that had been sent to me. And then he started behaving like someone who was drunk. It was so amusing watching me. He was giggling away. And I said, you're drunk on tea. And so, yes, tea can make you drunk as well. No? And it's psychoactive as well. No? And it's in a good way, actually. Although with my son, I got a bit worried. He recovered, no? And he hasn't asked for that type of tea lately. No? He prefers regular alcohol. No? So ang punto ko dito, no, is that besides the psychoactive substances, humans are that way. We look for all kinds of ways to alter our states of consciousness. No? We want to enjoy life. No? When you exercise, you're altering your state of consciousness. No? That's why you can run for miles, no, and you're experiencing a high, no, And then, of course, the next day, every muscle in your body is aching. No? You don't feel it because your body suppresses all that with endorphins. No? Yoga and meditation, and there are all kinds of meditation, music, dancing, sex, anything that taps into the senses are psychoactive. No? Okay, they're not substances. Well, they induce substances to be released in the body. No? And let's not forget food. No? Food brings pleasure, no, through different flavors, no, and the best cuisines, no, like Thai cuisine, they're good because they mix different flavors. No, human beings are very good with this kind of experimentation. No? We ferment food and beverages. No, that's why we have alcohol. And one of the theories we anthropologists have, the reason we turned away from nomadic lifestyles, no, was because we wanted to wait for alcohol to develop. For alcohol to develop, you cannot keep moving from one place to another. You know? And the archaeology evidence tends to suggest that was one reason nagsettle down tayo para sa alak. And we know the joys of eating here. No? The joys of eating come with experimentation, with new items, new mixtures, new ways of cooking. It's a search for sarap, no? Which is a psychoactive state. And it's not surprising that many languages, sarap is not just for food, but also for sex. No? Naghanap tayo ng sarap. No? Lami. No? Ano sa Ilocano? Letter N. No? Mga Ilocanos, you can type it out. No? Ay, sorry. Yeah, okay. And let's just take comfort food as an example. No? Nutritionists always say that comfort food is any kind of food with high carbohydrate content, and that's what comforts us. But really, comfort food is more than that. No? It includes the memories, no, of the time that we took it, no, who and with whom, no, prepared and consumed the foods, often associated with nostalgia, no, from the times our childhood and nanay preparing certain foods, no. During the lockdown, no, I had this intense craving for certain Chinese foods, no, and all the shops were closed. And I was going crazy looking for sibut. Some, sibut, no, those are the 4 herbs that you mix with, and I was so desperate. No, I called everyone. Can you get me sibut now? And do you call that addiction? Yes, there is craving. Maybe yes, there is addiction. I don't think it was the brain. It was wanting to be with nanay who passed away 3 years ago. It was one thing to be with friends. No? Okay, we also know that cultures, maraming mga pagkain ay gamot din. Food and medicines, very, very thin line. And they help in healing because they comfort us. No? They involve the altered states of consciousness. No? And they come together. They heal not just because of the active components of the product, no, but also because of the people around, the healer, the caregivers, haplos ng nanay, all of that comes together to give us that comfort, to give us that healing effect. And yes, many cultures found more powerful psychoactives that were to be useful. No? Marijuana is one. No? Even drugs used for anesthesia, no? The Datura species in the Philippines, yung trumpet flower, talong punay, no? And all kinds of other active plant drugs were discovered for their psychoactive effects. No? There is ayahuasca, which is now in the Philippines. There are mushrooms, no? Which matagal na yan sa Mindoro. We know they've been there around. No? Okay, very important is that psychoactives function with a very strong social component. No? They work because they bring people together. No? Even the term recreational drugs presumes that they work because you bring people together to recreate themselves. No? That very famous advertising line, iba ang may pinagsamahan, is very powerful, no? Because it captures the spirit of communal drinking. No? Maganda ang San Miguel kasi iba ang pinagsamahan. Iba talaga, you know that, no? When you drink alone versus drinking with friends, no? Drinking alone, you drink alone because you're depressed, and you drink alone and you become even more depressed, right? And group drinking, it can get out of hand, but group drinking is usually an act of joy, no? And it's alcohol that's working plus, meaning iba ang may pinagsamahan. Okay, and until the early, can we go back? Until the early 20th century, there were many natural psychoactives that were available. Jose Rizal himself admitted in a letter to a German colleague. Carl Rizal is our national hero. And in a letter he wrote to a German scientist colleague, the German had asked about hashish in the Philippines. And Rizal very frankly said that he had tried it when he was 18 because hashish and opium were available from the drugstores in Manila. It was all legal. In the Philippines, we have all of these things up to the 1950s. This is from a magazine. There's a particular medicine for nervousness, and it contains psychoactives. So they were all pretty much available, freely available. So what happened then? Why have we arrived at the situation where we are today? And it all summarizes, it all boils down to power. Societies needed to control human activities, and in particular, psychoactives were a target, because it allowed power blocks to compete or to control, to cooperate to control people. Where was this competition going on? From the medical establishment, the need to define what was safe or harmful, sometimes with a certain arbitrariness, because they were defining it mainly on the physiological aspects. And in earlier times, euphoria itself was seen as harmful by medical people. That is changing now, which is why we are seeing marijuana being approved not just for medical reasons, but for recreational reasons. People have finally come to their senses. If you will allow alcohol, then you have to allow marijuana. Uh, Pain management was desirable, and yet many doctors in the Philippines, we have doctors in the audience, you know that. We are very, very, very reluctant to use morphine. No pain, no gain. That continues to be the norm in the Philippines. So that's the medical power. Then one whole slide on this, religious powers. Religions, relig- Religions sought to define what was acceptable for altered states of consciousness. You think about it, lahat na religion, all religions induce altered states through prayer. But other groups' methods for inducing that are called satanic or heretical. I've been having problems even with Buddhist groups because I have been conducting mindfulness training, and they say that it is you are moving away from Buddhism, and they say it is dangerous. There's no psychology in mindfulness. It is Buddha, and it is there's no God in Buddhism, but it is Buddha, it is Buddhism that has created this. And I said, that's a lot of nonsense. Give me a break. Mindfulness is for mental health, but they will not deviate from original meditation. There's just this fear of any kind of altering of the state of consciousness kung hindi sila ang may hawak. So UP religious groups, UP, US religious groups are the ones who pushed the hardest for the prohibition of opium and later of alcohol in the United States. Colonial power was very, very important. The original war on drugs started in the Philippines. Many people are unaware. The United States, after occupying the Philippines, wanted to set themselves up as a model. They said, we are different from the British and the Dutch and all. And they said that we will do good for the people. And one first things they did was to prohibit opium in 1908. Everywhere else in Asia, it's legal. It was regulated by the government. And of course, governments made a lot of money as well from opium production and from selling it. But the US came in and said, no, we have to ban it. Okay? They wanted to be a model. And of course, that was the first war on drugs with disastrous results. And of course, today in our world, we see the rise of populism in the United States. Thank God he's gone. Brazil and the Philippines. Drugs were very convenient to be weaponized. The U.S. prohibition from 1920 to 1933 completely banned the production, sale, and consumption of alcohol. It was a way for the state, for the government to say, we are in control here. What the prohibition did was to simply lead to criminal syndicates taking over the production of liquor. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies were beginning to synthesize drugs. No, before the 20th century, a lot of psychoactives came from natural products from plants. No? Methamphetamine was formulated to, it was first used. No? It was formulated in the 19th century. During the Second World War, it was a medicine for, it was a product for German and Japanese soldiers to keep awake and keep alert. No? Shabu is fairly recent. It came around the 1950s. That's the crystallized form. No? And it is still, people who still say that they use it to stay awake. No? We often forget that there are people who even use it so they can go to work. No? Of course, we know it is used for other purposes as well. No? But it needs to be, we need to get more of the stories around how Shabu is used because it goes back to the way methamphetamine was used originally. No?
Doc Mike, we have five
And many
minutes left
medicines in the 1970s
for
that were used, no, were available over the counter. No? Codeine in cough syrups, no? Tranquilizers and sedatives. No? Uh, in the 1970s, there was a product called Bentyl PB, PB being phenobarbital. You could buy it over the counter for a nervous stomach. I know that because that was prescribed to me when I was in high school. No? And you think about it, that was really overkill. No? But that was the way of thinking at that time that psychoactives were medically useful. Okay? So what happened here, I think the slides got mixed up. No? But what happened was because of the strict regulations that were imposed, including a banning of many of the drugs, it led to an ignorance around psychoactives in general, whether legal or illegal. No? Um, many of our government people don't know what tobacco does, including its newest form, no, in vaping, alcohol. There are many gray areas around supplements. No? The government approved Lianhua, which is a Chinese herbal medicine supposedly useful in COVID-19. It also has a very high level of ephedrine, no? Which they banned many years ago. Now it's available through Lianhua. And ephedrine is a precursor for the production of shabu. No? I'm almost reluctant to mention that. No? Uh, I don't think Lianhua will be banned though because China donated lots of Lianhua to the Philippines. No? And of course, in the past, we had cough syrups. No? And then, of course, we have designer drugs, no? The very controversial party drugs or designer drugs. They're called that way because it involves what we call street chemists, no? Maraming mga marunong na pharmacists, chemists, who are able to tweak on chemicals to produce new psychoactives. No? And it's interesting that they are actually called by psychologists empathogens because they're chemicals which enhance empathy and feelings of goodwill. Okay, they were produced for that. No? They were produced to be used in rave parties, in concerts, no? Because it made people feel good towards each other. No? Later, they changed the name to enactogens because empathogens sounded like a disease. No? Pero ang punto lang dito is that empathogens are drugs that create empathy. Okay? And yet that is not what we know them to be, the way it is projected in media, right? So the designer drugs are actually derived from amphetamines. No? But shabu is the main target of the war on drugs because it is used mainly by the poor. No? And there are real problems defining what addiction is, as Carl has explained. No? And I'm not going to read through this, no? But I'm leaving the slides so you can look at it. But I use Nubain as an example. It has low addiction potential, yet it is a drug of choice for injecting drug use because it has very strong social components. No? A term that's being used is self-optimization. We often forget that many people use certain drugs to boost their self-esteem, make them more sociable. And rave culture, of course, the stadiums, the music, they all come together, together with the psychoactives. No? Okay, what happened? Why do we have the wars on drugs? And I'm using the plural here. They're actually weapons for populist leaders. In 1973, Marcos executed Lim Seng by firing squad. This is one of the first things he did with martial law. No? And the thing here is that he was not producing for local, and he was importing heroin from the Golden Triangle in Burma, and he was exporting it to the States. There's very little use in the Philippines, but he was executed as part of Marcos's theater to show, I am in power, this is what can happen to you. And it wasn't just about drugs. No? And the result, of course, is that you had this massive prohibition, no? The Dangerous Drugs Act and all of this, but it has only produced ignorance among people because suddenly all of that was now forbidden and all of it was simply painted as dangerous, as producing addicts, etc. And we are terrified because we fear the body, because we fear the mind, and because we fear human beings. We no longer trust each other to be able to use the psychoactives in the ways people used to before. I'm not going to go into details here. We just know that what has happened, the wars on drugs have created so much corruption, have created so much of it has fed into global syndicates. No? These are some headlines, examples, including the disappearance in 2018 of 6.8 billion shipment of shabu. No? The agents knew where it was. By the time they got there, it had gone. No? Next slide, please. And they called it failure of intelligence. No? And of course, the biggest concern I have is that this has become a war on information. No? We no longer have any rational discussion on psychoactives, no longer interventions on harm reduction. No? And it has created a drug speak, no? Doble salita, demonizing the addict. Here's just an example. I thought this fits in very well. No? Someone once said, when you buy in the subdivisions of the rich, like cocaine or heroin, they don't rapidly destroy the brain, unlike the shabu, which does. No? And shabu users then are like demons, parang demonyo, and these addicts have lower chances of recovery, which justifies the war on drugs, meaning wipe them out. Wala nang pag-asa sila. Pero mayaman, sige, mag-ano tayo dito. No? I just have 4 calls here. Okay, what we need is to have more sessions like what we're having today. Sessions where we have narratives, kwento ng mga tao involving many different stakeholders to map out the psychoactives, the landscape that we have, no? And allows us to better understand the use and abuse of psychoactives. Number 2, we need public education that is based on science, medical, natural, and social sciences. We need to dispel the misinformation, urban myths that actually create more risk and dangers. No? We should go back in history to learn from past mistakes. Paulit-ulit naman, wars on drugs don't do any good. No? And for the current situation, we must give priority. Tanggalin na natin ang pagkademonyo sa mga addict, no? Which has cost so many lives and has made us amenable to just wiping them out, executing them. No? Quote-unquote yung addict. I don't believe in that label. Number 3 is to develop more effective responses to people who do have dependency problems by listening to their own experiences, tapping cognitive-based approaches to rehab. Hindi pwedeng yung shaming, which is still being done today. Helping people to understand we have to understand where they're coming from, their reasons for doing drugs, and the social context. What is it that makes the psychoactive so important in their lives? No? Number 4. Finally, we need education on the psychoactives. And this can be done at home and in schools. No? We situate it in our culture, in our lives. No? I'm very conscious, for example, I see my son, if he can get drunk on tea, and I know that he reacts very quickly to alcohol, then I am teaching him, you have to know that you are more vulnerable to this. You do not stop taking alcohol, but you should know what your limits are. That's the way we have to go. No? Let's help young people and ourselves to know what the psychoactives are. There are individual differences in the way we relate to it. No? Whether it is tea, whether it's pain medication, you might notice I have missing teeth right now. The dentist has been torturing me the last 4 weeks. No? And I have resisted taking tramadol because I know I will love tramadol, but I finally had to take it the other day. No? Ang layunin natin is to take tamang timpla, tamang gamit. No? Right mixtures, right settings, right time. Let's put an end to the bawal mentality which only glamorizes the forbidden. And let's emphasize our shared human experiences, I'm borrowing from Ines, around psychoactives. No? Okay. This is a picture from a book called Human Wrongs by Rick Rocamora. It took puro black and white pictures ito taken in our jails. We have the highest jail occupancy in the world. We have put too many people in jail, often without due process. They do not even have charges filed against them. No? I want you to reflect on this picture. This man has been languishing for months. I hope he's out now. No? Because he was caught in one of the raids around drugs. No? Instead of thinking as government wants us to do, no, of demonyo as addict, think of this man. He was being visited by his wife, who's asleep on the right, and his child. No? Is this a demonyo to you? No? Think of the people in there, in our jails, no? And the children that are left behind, the families that they're left behind. No? Every person executed unjustly is not an addict. He is a father, a husband, a partner, a friend, a relative, a neighbor. I end here with my presentation. Maraming salamat.